Okay, we are recording. We're going to talk about John Calabro's mullet. Johnny, turn your head sideways so we can see it. Okay, that's the theme of late 70s, early 80s. But first, Coulsnub, if you wouldn't mind, will you tell the story about Jess falling, cracking his head? Because in our last call, people mentioned it, but no one's ever actually told the story. So people like me don't even know the story.
Okay, we've got three versions, mine and Lisa's and Joseph's. I'll tell mine.
Willis has one.
Oh, Willis has one too. Um, we'd been driving around in the camper a lot, fit on the back of the pickup truck, and there was a tall bed, and I put so Jess was born in June and this was August, and I put him to sleep on the top tall bed. On my right hand was a wall, at his head was a wall, at my left hand was pillows, and I knew he'd be safe there because when infants fuss and move, they crawl and go like this, and their head always goes and bangs against their head at the crib or wherever they are. And we went, Bernie and I went in to visit Linda Stoll and Dan. And then somebody came running in and said that Jess was on the floor crying.
So,
and,
so the floor, you mean on the bottom of the bed of the truck?
well, it was the camper.
It was a trailer pulled behind the truck?
No, the camper sat on the trunk, but the camper itself had a floor in it.
It was the kind of camper that you put in the bed of the truck and then anchor it to the truck itself.
Okay.
So he was as low as the bed of the truck, but it was the floor of the camper.
Okay.
And he was pale and crying. And of course, I was heartsick. I could not imagine how he would have fallen out. And so we went back to Marge South's where we were staying, and I held him the whole time, and he just looked sick, and he whimpered and cried, and oh, I was so heartsick. And then I think it was David South gave him a blessing, and then he didn't settle down. He didn't cry hard a lot, but he didn't settle down. He'd whimper, and then sometimes he'd throw up. So later that evening, we took him to the Idaho Falls Temple. Hospital. And they took an X-ray, and he had a fractured skull, and his skull was separated probably a half an inch. And so then we talked to the brain surgeon, and I said, how much damage? This was probably the next morning. I said, how much damage? Will he be okay? And the guy's answer was, well, what do you care? I don't know if that's the words I said, but basically his message to me was, well, you beat him up, you did it. What do you care? Obviously, you don't care. You're a negligent or abusive mother, and that, of course, broke my heart even more. And they told us to be really careful and not let him get bumped again. So we headed home and put him in the crib, and Bernie built a lid over the crib so that Jess's siblings couldn't crawl in and bump him. And they told us to take him to the pediatrician, which we did, and that was Dr. Clayton. And then Dr. Clayton said, "Well, come back in a month." So in a month.
What did Dr. Clayton, was this the first time you went to Clayton?
No, the first time I saw Clayton was when Jess was born. And Jess was premature and skinny as skinny could be. And Dr. Clayton walked in and he said, "Mrs. Knapp?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You have a beautiful, beautiful baby boy. But he has too many red blood cells. We're going to have to take some out. Is that okay?" I said, "Yes." We'd never had a pediatrician before. It was just the family doctor that always did the follow-up. So that's how we got acquainted with Dr. Clayton.
Didn't you tell me you kind of didn't trust Dr. Clayton because he said you had a beautiful, beautiful boy and you thought Jess looked like plucked chicken?
You don't want that on recording, do you? Well, I sure thought Jess was precious and special, but I thought he was sure skinny. I didn't know he was as beautiful as Dr. Clayton knew he was.
What do you think he looked like?
A plucked chicken. And that, I mean that because they're skinny. When the feathers are off of a chicken, it looks really skinny, especially its legs. Anyway, I don't think you should have bullied me into being disrespectful like that. Sorry, Jess.
So let me jump in really quick here with something about Dr. Clayton. When my kids were little and going to him, he won some award, and his partner at that time was Johnson. And they quoted in the newspaper, they quoted Johnson as saying Clayton was a cross between Mr. Rogers and Jesus. And I think that fits him perfectly.
Okay, very good. Okay, so back to after Jess fell. So I took him back for a follow-up appointment with Dr. Clayton 30 days later, and he said, can we get the x-rays from Idaho Falls? I said, "Well, I guess so. What's the problem?" And he said, "Well, I'm not sure that the gap in his broken skull is closing, and I'm concerned about it." So we did send for the x-rays, and I was just heartsick again, and I was praying about it, and I was hoping and praying that Jess would be okay and that my negligence hadn't turned him into an invalid or retarded his mental capacity or something. And as I was praying and wondering about it, the Spirit said to me, "Remember, Jess is my child before he's your child, and you don't love him any more than I do. And whatever happens to him is in my will, and whatever it is, it's okay." So I didn't know what that meant as far as what his development would be, but it did comfort me so that I felt okay about it. And luckily Jess grew up and he wasn't skinny anymore, and he wasn't retarded, and now he's the smartest one.
And the handsomest.
Yeah. 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 He's a beautiful, beautiful baby boy now. I'm done.
I'm a found up turkey now.
He's ready for Thanksgiving.
Okay, well, let's not be rude. Let's be nice.
Okay, now you guys talk about moving to.
Well, wait a minute. Does Lisa or Joseph or Willis want to say anything about that?
Well, I have about 8 memories. I can tell those and then listen the rest of the time.
I think she means, do you have a different version of the story of Jess Fall?
What's your question, Mom?
I just want to know if you want to say anything else about Jess and falling out of the camper bed.
No.
Okay.
So I'll add something really quick. The way I remember it, you didn't have pillows to the left. It was a big box of books because I had gotten a whole box of books from the library to read on the trip. And I also remember going out to the camper for something and opening the door and seeing him on the floor, and he wasn't crying yet. And of course, I knew that if he was on the floor, that was bad. So I ran in saying, Jess is on the floor, and freaking out. And then when we went back, he was crying. So I think I'd seen him when he first, my memory is that I'd seen him when he probably hadn't fallen for very long and he knocked out.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, people talk about moving to Shelley or Taylorsville or wherever the heck you lived.
We went to Shelley first.
199 Spruce Street in
I
Shelley.
trick or treated there about 4 years ago.
That's cool. We were really close to the high school. We'd go play on the sort of go play on the high school practice field. We lived around the corner from Claudia's daughter, Nikki Bauer, and her husband and 3 kids.
Jonas.
Well, they were a little further. They were right next to Claudia and Arch, and we didn't walk there. We drive. We probably could have walked, but not with all the little kids.
So does anyone have any funny stories or?
Okay, I'll tell you just real quick my thing. So Mom had been involved with study groups in Utah and kind of got in trouble, and Dad figured he'd better move her out of state to get us saved. So he quit his job and moved up there. Mom and the older ones can tell more stories about that. So we went to Spruce, and we got a split level house that we rented. There was a big dip in the driveway, and Dad had a 64 red Chevy pickup 3/4 ton, and we had a 68 Volkswagen bus was our car. And we weren't there very long, and Christmas morning happened, and I was probably 3, and I might have just turned 4 maybe. And for Christmas Day, I got a Tonka truck, a brand new one, and I was sick. I didn't feel well. I remember Christmas morning sitting on Mom's lap, and she pointed the truck out to me, and I wanted to play with it, but I didn't feel good. So she just held me on her lap for Christmas morning. Eventually I started playing with that truck, and I loved it. And I played with it in the big dip, the curb out of the driveway. And then it rained, and the water washed down and filled that dip in the curb. And Dad came home from work and couldn't see the truck that was in the ditch, in the water, and he drove over it and crushed it. And I was so heartbroken I couldn't even stand it. I kept asking, can we get another one? And he said, no, you don't take care of your things, you can't have nice things. And I just felt bad about that. Another thing is I had a baby blanket that I took with me everywhere, and it was ragged, and Dad got sick of me having it, so he took it away from me and hid it a couple of times. And I'd get it back out and drag it around and leave it around. And so one time he put it in the garbage, and I told him I wanted it, and he said, nope, you can't have it. So as soon as he went to work, I got it back out of the garbage and drug it around for another day or two. And then it disappeared entirely. I never saw it again. We, down from Claudia's house was a little utility store. And one day we went there and we bought a magical unit called a microwave. It was built into the oven, but if you set the dial just right and then you pushed the handle in and down and locked it, then you could super cook your food, and we didn't have to warm it. We could super cook it because we could put plain cheese on a plate and super cook it till it would bubble and crisp, and then we could break that cheese off and eat it. That was so good.
Buffy's speciality.
Huh?
I recall that as being Buffy's speciality.
No, that was good.
You
And
cooked
then-
it too long.
What?
I remember eating it gooey.
Well, we cooked it long enough, it was crusty. And then one time we decided we were gonna burn witches in that microwave. And so we would run to Mom's bedroom and she had a black dress hanging in the closet. And we would pretend to pull the black dress down and she would lock the microwave and turn it on so we could burn the witches. And then down at the end of the block, there was a little playhouse and it had 2 stories in it. And you could go into the main level and then go up a little baby stairway. And there was an actual upstairs in it. That was awesome. And then Lisa had her little pedal fire truck, and the neighbor next door helped Dad weld it so it would pedal.
Oh, wait, has to go.
So we played with that. And and then the other neighbor, who I think was the bishop, had a push button drive car.
Let's go all
And one time Sean and I were riding with them somewhere, maybe to primary in the middle of the week. And she was stuck in the driveway and she'd push the button forward and push the button backwards and push the button forward and push the button backwards and ramming on the gas, trying to weasel it out. And she did eventually get it moved and got it out. So those are all of my memories from Spruce.
Do you remember that pretty much the only thing you ever wore in Spruce? Do you remember what that was?
Love you, Blake. Bye. No, go ahead. What was it?
It was a dress.
That was in Taylor.
No.
I had a patchwork dress and Eileen swimsuit in Taylor.
So, well, maybe a patchwork dress, but in Spruce, you had a navy blue dress with white polka dots, and then under the skirt there was tulle, so it stuck out and it was fluffy, and you wore that to shreds. We could hardly get you in anything else. And yeah, the bishop that you mentioned, his name was Shamo, and he had a little girl named Kristen that had some disabilities, and a little girl named Nicole that you kind of had a crush on, not as much as Nicole Andrus, but you wore your dress all over and pushed trucks all over, and the bishop thought it was cute to see you in your dress.
Are you sad, Jitsu, that you grew out of that?
Well, first of all, that's not what my dad told me about the bishop. And second of all, how do you know if I grew out of it, Sean?
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe you got some surprises up your sleeve.
That'd be up my skirt, not my sleeve. That on.
Surprise up his slip.
Okay, let's not descend into the ridiculousness.
While I'm unmuted, one of the things I remember most about being there is across the street and up 2 houses was a kid whose name was Sean Allen. And he would always get me to go to his house. And when we'd go to his house, he'd just want to watch dumb Spider-Man cartoons. I thought Spider-Man cartoons were so dang stupid.
What did you want to do instead? Watch My Fair Lady or something
Probably
more?
wear Jitsu's dress.
You never wanted to wear the dress, or you could have.
Wanted to build snow forts in the park a block away.
When we were there, I said to Bishop Shammo, I bet you love being bishop. You get so many pats on the back. And he said, oh, I get 2 kicks in the pants for every pat on the back. And I said, well, I guess I'm glad I won't have to worry about ever being the bishop. And he said, well, I don't know. He said, I just got a letter from Salt Lake saying now that women can pray in sacrament meeting.
Oh dear.
Did they speak in sacrament meeting at that time?
I
And-
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
patriarchy started to crumble.
then it took them decades longer before they could pray in general conference.
It took
So-
who down longer?
Women. They didn't let women pray in general conference till about 5 years ago or something.
When you say they, do you mean the Lord or what?
I don't know. Before there was a message, before it was something that happened. I don't know who they is.
Oh, I'm with you.
Okay, let's hear some of Willis and Justin's memories. They had a big time at Shelley. Did you not?
Yeah, tell us about Travis Adams.
Or Booby Clark.
You guys, Justin and Willis, you got to unmute yourselves.
Oh, sorry. No wonder you guys haven't responded to one freaking thing I've said all day. I had no idea I was muted. I thought I was getting talked over. You can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
So we lived around the corner on the other side of the street from Boyer's. Corey Boyer was our cousin that was a little bit older than me, and he loved the rock band Kiss, and he had all these Kiss records. He had a big stereo in his room. And one day Willis and I went to visit, and his mom was in his room, and they were
It's actually
cleaning up.
Bauer.
What?
Sorry, I'm just clarifying. It's Bauer.
Instead of Boyer.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So they were cleaning up, and he had a little light shade on the ceiling, covered the bulbs you have, and it was all over the floor. And they told us that they were listening to Kiss Platinum 2 album and the light shade. And of course, I believed it. I don't know if I believe it anymore, but they were definitely cleaning the glass. It's probably more likely that it was a tennis ball or a baseball that did it. But I remember being in awe that they could play music that loud in their house to shatter glass.
Will, you have anything to say?
About Kiss or about Shelley?
Shelley.
I'm gonna have Usty tell a few more stories.
I think we just lost him.
Wow. I remember Kiss was my favorite band, but I'd never heard them. They never played them on the radio where I ever heard, but they were cool. They were even cool in Edgemont. Like the cool kids liked Kiss, but we never knew who they were or what they sang.
Was it just because of their makeup?
Well, just because we had, yeah, I mean, I think kids really liked them that had the ability to buy and listen to records.
Right, but the kids probably didn't care about their music. They just thought that they looked cool with their makeup, right?
Oh, no, I mean, I think they liked the music. Corey Bauer owned Kiss is the smartest marketing entity in pop culture history.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't necessarily have good music. They just were good marketers.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't mean their fans didn't like their music.
Yeah.
But Corey Bauer owned every freaking Kiss thing you could ever imagine. You go to his house, his entire bedroom, like cards were big, football cards and stuff, and he had so many Kiss cards, couldn't even trust it. Speaking of cards, our cousin, it's Candy Jonas Rogers' youngest brother, Jody. That guy collected Star Wars cards, and he had I mean, he had, I don't know, he had more money than I could have made worth of Star Wars cards. I don't even remember how he made his money or how he had so many Star Wars cards.
Did Star Wars come out before we moved to Shelley?
We saw Empire
my.
Strikes Back in Idaho Falls. So
Yeah,
we
I
had
saw
seen,
Star
we had
Wars
seen,
at University Mall.
yeah, same. So moving to Shelley for fifth grade for me, just turning 10. In fact, somehow I was able to come back to Edgemont and have my 10th birthday with all my Provo friends.
You
I was
did
kind of
it?
excited. It was kind of exciting to move. Yeah, I had it at Canyon Glen with the Chapmans and Faulkners and whoever.
We moved to Shelley. We moved into our house one night,
And
then
school started the next morning.
day, yeah.
Yeah. When we finally moved in. So at Edgemont, everything was soccer. We played soccer at every recess. We were all about soccer. We loved soccer. We had soccer balls, and we moved to Shelley. They never heard of soccer in their life. They never even seen a soccer ball. It was all football. Justin was in third grade. All our friends played tackle football in a tackle league, and so we started to learn how to play football and played football with those guys. And our first cousin Burdette
Yes.
Hess, he was a professional football player in Canada. He wasn't much younger than Dad, even though he was our first cousin. And he told Dad not to let us play football because it was too dangerous. So we never got to play it, which was horrible to live in Shelley and we learned to love football, and we're pretty good at it. Justin was probably really good at it. I guess I could hold my own, but we got into football and we'd sneak over and watch the football, not sneak over, we'd watch the football games at the high school, and you were supposed to pay to get in. There was a hole under the fence that all the little neighbor kids would crawl under and go to the games. And I remember Travis Adams trying to get me to crawl under, and I so couldn't trust how dishonest that was. And I think one time we finally climbed over the fence in, and I got my coat and everything caught and torn on the fence. But football was awesome. We got into football cards. Justin and I would save our money and buy football cards at Bauer's store, our cousin's store. And somehow I got Justin to buy football cards and loved the Steelers, but I always ended up the one trading them, and he basically just helped fund my my venture. One of the weird things for me was moving to a new school, a new place, and it was obvious the first couple of days. I had the wrong wardrobe. Like nothing I wore fit in there. And it was just such a different culture. It was such a different place. We went to the Dean Goodsell Elementary School, and it was K through sixth grade. Or no, they didn't have kindergarten. It was first through sixth grade. Is that right, Mom? And then there was the Taylor School east of town, a few miles, that was all fifth grade, except for Dean Goodsell had one fifth grade class. So the new kids in our ward that were my buddies that we'd play football with and basketball, and there were some homes being built at the end of our street. And so we'd go play in those, just these, vacant homes that they were just framed out, but we'd play in those houses. And so I didn't get to go to school with any of my friends because they all went to a different school. And I can't remember why Dad wouldn't let me go to that school. And he may have wanted me to be at the same school as Justin. The next year, they built a new school and got rid of the Taylor School. And the new school was called Hazel T. Stewart, and it was fourth through sixth grade. And so all those fifth graders came back over. So 2 years in a row, I was the new kid because I didn't know 80% of the fifth graders. But that was kind of a fun area. We somehow talked Mom into buying us BMX bikes in Idaho Falls, and we could ride our bikes to school. They were Rampars, whatever that was. Rampar was a brand that we knew about in Edgemont before we moved, and people were getting BMX bikes and they were cool. And we couldn't persuade Snubby in Edgemont, but somehow we prevailed in Idaho.
Where did
That
you
was
and
pretty
Justin
cool.
get your money to buy football cards?
Okay, this is crazy. I was 10 years old, and members of our ward would hire me to babysit their children at 10 years old.
I don't remember babysitting. I babysat all the time.
Yeah, you had a babysitting kit.
So how did Justin get his money as an 8-year-old? Did he babysit?
I don't remember earning any money. So when we went to that first year of school, it was an old school that was heated with, I don't remember what, but they had the big radiators in your room, and you'd be sitting on your desk next to a radiator, and kids would take their crayons and melt them on the radiator. And the radiators were colorful from all the melted wax. But I remember walking into my teacher, Mr. Jackson, and wanting to make an announcement to the class. And the announcement to the class was, "You no longer call me Justin. My name is Willie Jr." Because on the football field, the recess, Willis's buddies, he's playing football, started calling me Willie Jr. So I officially wanted to be that. I'm not sure how long it lasted, but I was adamant that was my name. And as scrubby as we were, Willis and I had two of the nicest bikes in the school, which again was some sort of it was a fun blessing, of which started a whole series of us doing fun things with bikes and jumping over fire and building things and playing with those. But I do remember sneaking into the football field, and the high school was the Shelley Russets. And even at 8 years old, I knew that Russet was not a cool mascot. We would laugh about that our high school was named after a potato. And then in the fall, in October, during the spud harvest, they would let school out for 2 weeks, and a bunch of high school kids would go work. And so we had a parade, the Spud Harvest Parade or Spud Day Parade or something. That was a big, big deal in Shelley, and we were in the potato capital of the world. I remember Mom and Dad being gone in that Shelley house, and we were in the main level, and we heard noises downstairs, like something crashing off of a shelf or something. And I remember being terrified and being upstairs with Willis and probably Lisa and wondering if there was some person or some animal in the basement that was going to get us. And another memory I have is it snowed and it snowed and it snowed and it drifted. And we had so much deep snow in our yard to play in. We could make tunnels in the drifts. And that was just heaven for kids in their moon boots to have that much snow to play in all those winter months.
Yeah, our backyard, somehow the way the wind went, it drifted in like a bowl. So there was almost no snow in the middle and then big drifts on the outside, right? Is that how you remember it?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Willis, you said when you got there you had the wrong clothes. Did we get you the right clothes?
Oh yeah. We eventually got the appropriate bell bottoms.
From
You no, Mom made Justin and I each a pair of corduroy bell bottoms.
So they weren't even bell bottoms. They went like this. They started out at your waist, and by the time they hit your foot, they were about this wide.
They were called
thing-
elephant pants.
Yeah.
The thing is you didn't want to be able to see your shoes. You wanted your elephant pants to cover your tennis shoes. And imagine what they're like when they got wet and you're at recess trying to run with 900 pounds of wet denim or whatever. But back then the thing was Cat Diesel Power. There was Caterpillar, and they had patches, right? So we would have Mom sew a Ford patch or a Cat Diesel Power patch on the back pocket of our bell bottoms. And man, I thought we were awesome. And I had the same problem when I moved back to Provo in 5th grade. I was culture shocked because I was some doofus from Idaho with bell bottoms and a midriff shirt that was too short on my first day of school. And I had to adjust and compensate for that mess.
So I think one of the things I remember most about when we lived on Spruce is I always liked to be in the dresses and the fancy high heels, and I'd ride the bus from the middle school to the high school because half the kids were rural, and there would be one bus, and we can talk about that later when we get to Taylor. But it'd pick up. Then they started doing kindergarten, so K through 12 would all ride the same bus, and then it would just stop at different schools. And we found a bus driver that had let us ride from the middle school to the high school. So I'd ride to the high school and then walk home just across the practice field. And I knew snow was cold. And then there was one day I remember, and I'd walk on the snowmobile tracks because that was kind of packed and I wouldn't get snow on my feet. So there was one day I was wearing a dress and open-toed high-heeled sandals because those were my shoes I wore with a dress. And I walked on the track and I didn't get snow on my toes. And it was probably 5 minutes walk. 10 at the very most. And I got home and my toes hurt, and they hurt and they hurt, and they were so cold. And we had the little heaters, the little electric heaters at the baseboards, you turn them on, and I was trying to warm my toes up against the bar heaters and couldn't figure out why they were so cold because I didn't get snow on them. Well, I hadn't ever taken into account that there's like air is cold too, and I ended up with frostbite on all of my toes, and then later ended up peeling off dead skin about that thick from the frostbite. So realize that just not getting snow on your toes isn't enough if you live in a Arctic tundra. And people told me, well, why were you stupid enough to wear shoes like that? I'm like, because I didn't get snow on my toes. I was 12. How was I supposed to know frostbite would get you walking on snowmobile tracks?
Did mom call you a stupid eagle?
I don't think so. I think she was compassionate about it. Another thing is when Willis and Justin got their BMX bikes, I finally was allowed to get my ears pierced. So that was financially not equal.
I remember at that era we found the sand dunes, probably in St. Anthony. I remember somewhere jumping out of the van and playing all on the sand dunes and coming back with our pockets and socks full of sand, but thinking it was magical.
Yeah, it was Sandy Downs. It was way closer to home than St. Anthony.
Okay.
You guys mentioned moon boots, but those were the same moon boots that were handed down to us on 640.
Yep, same ones.
Yeah.
By the time we got them, the moon boots turned our socks blue.
I was just thinking Jess is the only one that got a BMX and an ear piercing. But that's for a later part of the chronology.
That's what you call the
Speaking of
golden
Willie
guy.
Jr.,
Yeah, I think my friends called Justin Willie Jr. up until we moved, at least the kids in my grade, because they always still allowed him to play sports with us at recess, which when we moved to the new school was always either blacktop or dirt. There was never a lawn that year. One of the challenges for me was 5th grade was a repeat of 4th grade in Provo. So we were learning fractions and all this boring stuff that I already had learned. So I was so bored to tears. I was the new kid. I was trying to fit in. I've never been a good reader. I like to read, but I don't, I would be certainly ADD and maybe some other reading disability, but I can never comprehend. So we always were reading these social studies things or whatever. You have to, read pages or whatever, and then answer questions or write reports. And oh, that was so overwhelming and tedious for me. And so I'd just start losing interest. I melted packs of crayons on those heaters Justin talked about. I got really good at spit wads and throwing crayons. My teacher got really good at taking me out in the hall and paddling me with a big wooden paddle while I held my ankles. That was something so
sure, Wilga, that really happened.
Nice try, Fat On.
You got paddled too.
How much trauma would that have caused?
Nothing. He liked it so good. He joined Sigma-Tau later.
It was just punishment.
It was just, and my 6th grade teacher was a baseball player. He swung way harder than my 5th grade teacher.
The teachers prided themselves on their paddles. They would have a custom paddle and did it have their name on it or some story about it or something?
Drill holes in it so there was less air resistance. Sean, do you remember getting paddled?
No, that was all made up to try to be cool for my big brothers.
Got paddled in 1st grade for playing kissing tag. And kissing
well, I think
he made it up.
Well, that's the story I'd always heard.
If I was ever paddled, it would have been from running away from what's his name, Superman costume boy that would start acting like he was deranged and freaky, so everyone would start running from him, and then that'd get him frustrated. He'd even get more wigged out. So he had big red rubber boots and a Superman cape and shirt. And I remember feeling bad when we'd go in. We went in and the teacher gave us a big lecture on being nice, and I hadn't realized we weren't being nice. We were just running from him because he was freaking frothing at the mouth.
When Kathy was born, we lived on Spruce Street when Kathy was born. And when she came home from the hospital, she was in a little bassinet, and all of her brothers and sisters slept in the living room so that they could be with her. So I put her bassinet on the floor and everybody slept on the floor.
No.
What's a
I
bad
remember
We
someone was
still
doing,
feel that way when Lottie's around.
Oh, thanks.
I remember we got someone doing the 12 days of Christmas. So every night in that Shelley house, we would be anticipating a doorbell ringing and have some sort of treats left. I think we found out it was our cousins.
The boy?
Well, we
Jonas.
chased the Jonases. We chased them down and caught them, and so then they quit doing it.
And then we realized that was a dumb idea.
Should have waited till the 12th day, huh?
I think so.
No.
So we and they ran in our backyard and tried to hide behind the camper, but we busted them. Justin and I chased them down. It was probably Kirby and either Jamie or Jody. So that was a huge winter. And I remember another thing I felt ripped off is the Taylor school was always closed. So I'd be at school, all my buddies who lived in our street in our ward would have a snow day because they couldn't get to school or the heater stopped working or whatever. But that ditch gutter Joseph talked about, Mom parked the bus there, and then winter came and it froze into the curb. And the bus was frozen there for months, wasn't it, Mom?
A long, long time. It was the water was about that deep on the tire, and it wouldn't move.
Because I remember I was always trying to go visit my buddy Benton Larson in Woodville, but Mom could never take me because she couldn't drive because her car was frozen.
I remember her boiling pots
to
of
get some hot
water, dumping them out on the tires to try to unloose it.
I also remember in Shelley, we went and took swimming lessons. I think that, I don't know at what point, but I think we still lived in Shelley, not in Jamestown. And I remember Willis and I had a swimming wardrobe malfunction, but I also remember being scared to death of the low dive, which was probably 2 or 3 feet off of the water. I remember crying about it and then feeling vindicated later in life when I wasn't scared of water. But didn't we take our exercise shorts, like our basketball shorts, to swimming, and they were see-through, Willis?
Yeah. Because you were on the diving board. It was a ward party. And by then we lived in Jamestown. And I saw you on the diving board and I was like, yikes, Justin, jump in here. And when you jumped in, I was like, yeah, we can't get out of the pool again.
Whoops.
One thing I remember about Shelley, going to school in Shelley, and I was in, well, they didn't call it middle school, they called it junior high. It was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and I went there for 7th and 8th grade. But there were so many kids that did drugs. Like I had never, like it never even, I mean, we'd had in 6th grade in Edgemont, we'd had the drug abuse unit and don't do drugs, but it was foreign to me that kids actually would. And there were so many kids in Shelley that were probably mostly pot, but it blew my mind how many kids were high all the time.
So I never heard my father say a swear word in my life, but I heard a rumor that he swore at somebody that was after Lisa. Is that true?
That,
Robert Layton.
It is
Jameson.
true, but it was after we moved to the Taylor trailer.
yeah, it was in Taylor.
Oh, what happened there?
As long as this is going right now, that may be a different conversation.
Oh, you got to tell it now. I brought it up.
Okay, well, there were these kids that lived out there, and one was a grade ahead of me and one was a grade below me, and they were rotten kids. And they'd pick on me and harass me and on the bus, and they lived out near our direction, so they knew where I lived. And there was one day I was in my bedroom. They had been out there bugging me or something, so I went in the house, and they were trying to get in my bedroom window, and I had the curtain shut to keep them out, and they wouldn't stop. And Dad came out and told him to get the H off his property.
Really? I never heard that story.
Did they ever come back?
Oh, probably.
Probably.
They were total juvenile delinquents.
Yeah, they ended up.
Go ahead.
I don't
Yeah,
think
they burnt their next door neighbor's house down. The hoop.
after we moved. Yeah.
Yeah. But their dad had a garage full of pornography, and they didn't single out Lisa. They picked on every single person they could. They were horrible.
What were their names?
Robert was the younger brother, and the older brother was Chris. Their last name was Layton.
So someone help me with my glossary of terms. Spruce, Shelley, Taylorsville or Taylor, whatever, and Jamestown.
Okay, so Spruce and Shelley, we lived on Spruce Street in the actual town of Shelley. So those are the same thing. And Taylor and the Taylor trailer in Jamestown are the same place. We were in the Jamestown ward.
So Jamestown is the name of the ward and Taylor is the city?
Well, it was the city, like I think our address was Idaho Falls. But
it was just an area that they called Taylor. It probably wasn't really a city, but there was a school and a store at it. And it was out a little ways away from Shelley, and not quite as far as Idaho Falls.
And Jamestown is just the name of the ward. That's why.
Yeah, Jamestown and Taylor were just names people called stuff, called the area. I don't think they were ever official.
I think it'd be like Indian Hills and Edgemont.
Yeah.
Like names of areas, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Willis.
We had I think her name, Willis brought up someone Adams. I think they lived across the street, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Adams was probably the primary president.
Uh-huh.
So I remember having the task for her sake, I think, and then they had me do it. She would have me over across the street to recite this poem from memory. I won't read it all except for just give you the flavor of the first stanza. I love you, mother, said little John. Then forgetting his work, his cap went on, and he was off to the garden swing and left her the water and wood to bring. And I remember being at the chapel, sort of getting nervous because I had to go in and do it for the whole primary. She would just go nuts every time I do the poem.
She also had you do a Christmas poem that she taught you.
John, can you send me a copy of that poem?
Yeah, I'll forward it now.
And Sean went
Video
on
yourself.
Sean
Saying it, Fat On, and send her the video.
Sean went on to write Granny, get out of the garden.
When we lived in that ward, one of the young men's, young women's activities was to learn how to disco dance.
Was that with or without roller skates?
Without. You can't do the Latin hustle in roller skates.
I don't know, Lily. Don't you remember going to Starlight? You could do every disco thing there
Well,
was.
you moved, but you couldn't do you couldn't have done that very well in roller skates, but
So that
There
was
was a place. There was a place that was roller skating, Starlight skating, and they had a car that looked like a roller skate. I don't have any.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't have any clue how they made that, but it was iconic.
Well, it would
but
have
it really drove around town, right? We'd see it
Yeah.
sometimes.
yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
similar to the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, except it was this gigantic roller skate
Instead of a gigantic wiener.
instead of hot dog in a bun. Let's clarify what I'm talking about here.
Was that Starlight Skate in Idaho Falls?
Yeah.
What do you think that's the same one we went to, Mom, when we lived on Louisville?
Probably.
I took many a laps around that one, baby. Yeah.
Yep.
To pour
Looks
some
like-
sugar on me.
nothing like getting picked at the snowball.
So when I was in probably fourth grade, I had a girlfriend named Becky, and somehow had arranged to ride my bike to her house after school to go see her. And Wilga and I were into drawing, and we had markers, and I don't know if I requested or if Willis, I don't know whose idea it was, but Willis wrote Becky all over my forearms in different colors of marker. So I show up to Becky's house on my bike, realizing, oh crap, her name is written all over my arms. So I kept my coat on and went inside and we hung out. And I remember her mom like, do you want to take your coat off? Nope. Are you sure? Nope, I'm just fine. And I sat there sweating for however long I was there because I was so embarrassed at that point that I had her name all over my arms.
Well, at least you didn't go see Trina Wheeler with Becky written all over your arms.
Whose idea was that?
I don't know. There were other kids who did it.
I went to Shannon Nelson's house and got a picture of her.
Right?
That was at 6:40.
Yeah, she was a bit old for you.
I know, Wilga liked her, but I went into her house and told her I had a crush on her. Could I have a picture? And she gave me one.
There was a little girl that lived down on the corner of our street that had an awesome playhouse. It was 2 stories tall in her backyard, and you could see it from the street. And I also remember there we had neighbors, Todd, and maybe his little brother was named Jeremy
Yeah.
Thorpe.
Thorpe.
And they would always, I don't know if they had a noon whistle or something, like, you know, how we have a 8 o'clock whistle in Provo, but the state hospital. Seemed like there might have been like a noon whistle or something. And as soon as that whistle went on, it was time for Todd and Jeremy Thorpe to go home and take their nap. I never had my mom didn't make me go home and take a nap, and I felt nap deprived.
Tim, are you planning to do a whole nother recording on Jamestown?
Sounds like we need to.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
Feel like we probably pushing this well, it's about as long as we want it.
When do you want to do the next one? A week from now is the family reunion in Lava Hot Springs.
Hold
Mom?
on. Before we plan that, while I'm still recording, let's see if anyone else has anything they want to talk about of Shelley.
I just real quick have a memory of Arch Hess. He was the sheriff. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And our relative and Willis and I went and watched an NFL football playoff game, the Houston Oilers, somebody, and he had smoked. And at some point they took a skin graft from somewhere. And my memory is he had a graft like down his chin, across his whole neck. And I remember being in his house and just not being able to stop staring at this ginormous skin graft. And it made me decide that, boy, the last thing I ever want to do is smoke cigarettes.
Well, that
So hang on real quick. We watched the AFC Championship where the Steelers beat the Oilers and went to the Super Bowl. And then we watched the Super Bowl at Travis Adams' house. And Burdette was there, and Burdette was physically holding a cigarette in Arch's mouth.
And was Archie his dad?
Uh-huh.
Not Archie.
Arch.
Arch.
But Arch was, for whatever reason, at that point, he couldn't do it himself. And I'd always remembered him smoking a pipe, but I'd never watched him smoke a cigarette. But he was only doing it with the assistance of his son.
from what I remember, maybe there was a skin graft, but it was cancer, and they'd had to remove his jaw. He didn't have a lower jaw, and he couldn't even really eat. And boy, and still trying to smoke, and that I don't think I would have anyway, but that solidified it for me. That was one of the most horrific things I'd ever seen in my life.
One of the best things about living in Shelley is we could tie a sled to the back of a car and drive around and go sledding. And it was one of those relatives, I don't know if it was his daughter or someone else, smoked. And Dad came home one day and told us this story, and he's just laughing that this relative had told Dad, you be careful with those kids and don't tie those ropes too close to the car, they're going to breathe the exhaust. And she was smoking the whole time she was telling Dad about watching make sure the kids weren't breathing the exhaust. And Dad thought that was so funny.
I remember
Ben, Mom,
What?
who would that have been? Because
I don't know.
Sherry and Charlene. No, Charlene didn't live there. Sherry and Nikki lived there, and they didn't smoke.
the coolest thing about going to Arch and Claudia's house was they had really cool things like you'd buy out of a Sharper Image catalog or something for kids to sit and reverently hold, like those panes of sand between glass and just rotate it, or weird sort of lava lamp type things or something.
Yeah, those were cool, but not as cool as the two cars they had parked in the garage.
Their house was Pepto-Bismol pink, and their stairs and trim were this shade.
Wow.
I was always scared of Arch. I always was uncomfortable at their house, and they had the worst freaking yappy dogs on the planet.
Ooh.
Probably Chihuahuas, weren't they?
Probably.
They probably had cancer.
Justin, was it you that said that? Who was it that just told us the story about Dad's cat saying don't pull the sled too close? And
Yeah, but I can't remember which relative or person he was talking to that told him that.
I can't think of who it'd be either.
Well, who was their other daughter?
Claudia's other daughter.
Yeah.
Well, she had an older daughter, Eleanor, that we never met at that period. And there was Nikki and Charlene and what was the about?
Sherry.
Sherry Jonas lived
Oh,
right
yeah.
next to
Yeah,
Claudia.
I don't remember any of Claudia's girls that would have smoked. I can't even picture what relative it would be.
And Eleanor.
That's all right. We don't need to figure it out right now.
Okay.
Hey, did Willis and Justin, did the Bernie dog happen at Shelley or Taylor?
Taylor.
All right. Guess we'll have to wait till next time.
Yeah, I've got several memories of Taylor. I just don't want to launch into him, so we'll keep it separate.
Jamestown.
Well, I do remember our very first night arriving there, and for some reason it's a really vivid memory to me. The smell of the hand soap in the bathroom when you first go in. There was some new soap that I'd never seen before, and it was cool.
Coast to coast or Coast deodorant soap.
Blue and white swirl or whatever lined, and the smell of that, I'm like, whoa, such fancy soap.
Well,
So maybe mom can tell us this, but at some point, Eleanor South showed up to our house and she had cleaning supplies, gloves, tubs,
And
brushes, and
And-
charts
yeah.
that told you how to clean. So when we did our Saturday chores, if I had the upstairs bathroom, I guess we only had one bathroom, didn't we?
There's a little half bath downstairs, like there is in mom's house now.
Anyway, you had a checklist, but it was kind of fancy. But I remember thinking, what, these guys don't, nobody thinks we know how to clean, and maybe we didn't. I know Dad was probably paranoid that we're in a rental house and he didn't want to lose his deposit by leaving a dirty house, because we always had to, it was kind of like, don't tread lightly.
Yeah.
Well, the front room, living room carpet was white.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And we hired a rug shampoo person to come and clean it, and they still docked us on it when we moved out.
Well, anybody that puts white in a rental is not bright.
So when you walked into that split level house, there was a door, and then you went down to the basement or the one downstairs level, and that was essentially Justin and mine's bedroom. We had a bunk bed in there, but it was also sort of the family room. Like that's where the Christmas tree and everything was. I drove by there this summer. Man, that's a little house.
Okay, I've thought of a couple other things. We were going to host Thanksgiving, and it probably would have been some of the Souths that came, or I don't know, Clinton, Connie, or whatever. I don't remember. But I woke up that morning throwing up, and some relative told Mom, well, get her Coke. Go get her Coke.
Coke syrup.
Well, you can't buy Coke syrup. It was just a can of Coca-Cola. Well, I know what, anyway. So there was like a Circle K or something, and so they quickly moved Thanksgiving, and I was semi-scandalized that I was given a can of Coca-Cola to drink.
What do you mean semi-scandalized, Lise?
Well, it was my parents giving it to me, so I wasn't completely scandalized.
So did it help? Did it
I don't
help?
remember. I think 7-Up did better. And now knowing more in my life, I think if you're gonna drink a soda, it should be ginger ale with actual ginger.
I remember Judy South coming over there, and she just raving about my coloring in a coloring book and how superior I was to Rebecca's coloring. And I felt like, dang, like
I hope
felt
Rebecca,
so awkward about that. Rebecca wasn't there, but I was like, don't
So
throw
that's-
Rebecca under the bus. to
another
make me
thing
feel
I
good.
remember related to you, Sean, was so we got there and they didn't have kindergarten like Willis mentioned. And so you were supposed to do some kind of stuff, studying on your own to get ready for first grade. And they gave you a book with sounds, and there was like knocking door with the D, and you were supposed to say knocking door, duh, duh, duh.
Lariat, woo, woo, woo.
Yeah, and we couldn't figure out what the heck lariat had to do with W. So Mom asked some teacher, and she said, well, when you swing the lariat, it goes. So they weren't matching up the image to the. It just happened that knocking on a door sounds like duh, 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 and a door starts with D.
We do that every day with the the big long pointer. She'd tap it up on the alphabet at the front of this room, the letter. Oh my gosh, that would be comedic to have that whole thing.
Yeah, I wish we could find that
You
one.
should have started spitting spitwads too.
We
I
had
couldn't do my counting from 1 to 100 on my paper chart to get to lunch on time. I don't know if I was being fed fluoride pills then or not.
Oh, jeez.
we had a tricycle that was shaped like a John Deere tractor that was green, and Sean rode it in the Spud Parade.
Yeah.
I also remember it was Judy South that I guess I was just full throttle picking my noggin. And she's like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, you go get a tissue. You blow your nose. She gave me a big thing. I'm like, what? What the heck is she talking about?
When you
I
say
never knew it was bad to pick your nose, and all of a sudden I'm shamed over it. Like, oh, whoops.
so, full throttle picking your noggin was meant to be you were picking your nose.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all figured it out, Tim.
What?
So when we were kids in Edgemont, we would always go to the 4th of July parade, and our Bishop Losi owned the James Bond Goldfinger Alfa Romeo car, and he'd drive it in the parade and flick the license plates and all the little tricky stuff. And, you know, it was a big deal.
Was it
The
an Alfa Romeo or was it an Aston Martin?
Maybe an Aston Martin.
Aston Martin.
So anyway, we you know, the Freedom Parade was always a big deal. So we get to Shelley, and we always knew there was Spud Vacation and whatever because of everybody in Idaho. When we knew Jay Andrus had Spud Vacation and NOLA. So all of a sudden there's a Spud Day parade and a Spud Queen, and it, you know, it was a smaller scale, but for them it was as big of a deal as the Freedom Festival. And I remember walking around the Spud Day festivities, and the kids mine and Justin's age they played in football games that day. Well, of course we weren't on the tackle league, so we didn't, but we were so, even at that age, we're like, this is so goofy. All this is about a potato. Seems so backward to me.
Yeah. I was going to mention this, but I didn't want to interrupt Justin. As dumb as the Russets were as the high school mascot, the junior high mascot was the Spudnik, which was like a baby potato. I couldn't even deal with how dumb that was.
Well, Sean and I got to Idaho Falls, and the high school was the Bonneville Bees, and the one junior high was the Wasp, and the other was the Yellow Jackets. And I was dumb.
Oh.
So our father, Bernie Knapp, was gonna move to Shelley, Idaho and teach high school before he got a job at Utah Technical College, like last minute, or we would have grown up and been Spuds forever.
Well, what shocked me was a couple years ago, Mom told me that he almost homesteaded in British Columbia, and I would have been some Canadian hick milking some cows in negative 40 degrees. That'd be even worse, wouldn't it?
No, it'd be better. You have a bearskin rug and a moose hanging on your rafters, and nobody bugging you.
And it'd be
I have a
winter.
Discovery Channel show about it right now.
And you'd be chasing coyotes on a snowmobile.
Yeah, all year round it'd be cold.
Justin, Lisa, and I have memories of one or two trips in the camper in that red Ford or Chevy, sorry, Joe, going to Canada and visiting our friends that were homesteaders, or mom and dad's friends.
Well,
Yep.
if we lived there now, they wouldn't let us leave our house because of COVID.
Well, if you lived out where he was going to homestead, it wouldn't matter.
COVID couldn't live there and nobody would care.
Right.
Oh, I do remember too in that house I didn't go to kindergarten except for a 3-week kindergarten. So, and I remember mom teaching me how to write my name.
Well,
I-
I go to
that-
my next meeting, folks. I love you all.
Hey, bye, John.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay, bye.
Oh, and I also remember learning how to do the rabbit ears. One rabbit ear has to go through the hole, and then you pull it. Kept having to do it again and again to learn to tie my shoes.
You graduated from Velcro.
They
Velcro
hadn't
didn't
invented it
exist.
then.
They didn't have Velcro shoes when we were little kids.
Really?
No.
We
No,
had rainbow tape though.
You had to learn
That
to
was a
tie 'em.
Shelley special.
Well, Velcro got invented like in the
Well,
80s.
there was probably Velcro around, but they didn't put it on shoes.
You guys remember rolls of rainbow tape?
Yeah.
Okay, should we pause it?
Yeah.
What did Justin say about riding bikes over fire?
He said, "Don't do it, Johnny."
Yeah,
Those are stories for our next time when we out in Taylor.
Now, so Joseph is the youngest that can remember anything. Ruth, you never shared anything. Is that because you don't have any memory?
I don't have very many memories. Some things that you've said, I don't know when Arch passed away, but I have a vague memory of being small, being in their house and knowing my uncle passed away. And when we lived at 640 and we went over to Shauna Cartwright's house, I can't remember. Anyway, we played there once in a while and in their backyard, but when I was in their house, it made me feel like I remembered the Taylor house layout, at least simply that entryway. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but
You mean
that's-
Shelley? Or do you mean
Yeah.
Taylor?
No, I did mean Shelley. And the another thing that I don't remember specifically in Shelley, but when we moved and there was one bed and one dresser that were moving probably into 640 and I saw them, then it made me also think of Willis and Justin's room when we lived in Shelley. Again, I don't know if that was accurate, but it also reminded me of stories when I thought that the doggy would bite me or the horsey would bite me. And I don't remember those nightmares. Anyway, so those are just fragmented things that I had an associated or made up.
Your horsey bite me things, those happened in my memory when we were in 640.
No, in my memory, they happened in Edgemont.
Well,
We had the neighbor's horse and donkey, and they weren't as nice as ours. And Ruth got in the.
I remember Buffy having wig out about horsey. Well, never mind.
Well,
Maybe
she may have had the dreams later, but the instance where I crawled under a thing in a fence and pulled her out from where we had the neighbor's donkey and horse and felt like I had saved her life.
We don't.
Thank
need-
you.
I'm sure I made it more dramatic than it was, but
We don't need to debate for 5 minutes where we lived when she had her nightmares. We just know that she had nightmares.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
for post production editing.
No, we would do one take.
Oh,
What about Jess or Laddie? They got any memories?
I don't remember crap.
I don't have any.
Got a cracked skull and brain damage.
Oh, we lived in Edgemont then.
I know.
And Kathy was born when we lived at Shelley.
Jess was a year old and Kathy was born, so I don't expect them to remember anything.
Yeah, especially because he had a cracked skull.
Well, I was so scared as a child that Jess was going to be retarded because they had said that brain damage and retardation was a possibility. And boy, I remember rallying everybody to pray and just how much we thought about and were worried about Jess. It was scary to me. It was traumatic when I remember when he fell out of the camper and all of a sudden we had to figure it all out. And we were, like Mom said, we were visiting the Stolls and they lived in a trailer park in Idaho Falls. And they were in visiting and we were out talking to some neighbor kid. And there was a kid younger than me out there smoking cigarettes that was bragging and proud of themselves. And we realized that talking to the kid, at least the kid said that, like, we were like, how can you do that? Won't you get in trouble? Oh, my parents don't care. They let me. And I remember thinking, oh, they're probably right. That's even scarier.
oh, that is so weird. Some of those small town communities. Oh,
Okay,
Virgo.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Okay.